What's going on YouTube? It's Mike here, and today guys, I have some great news for you. Apple has just announced the iPad 3. So today, I'm going to be going over it. So if any of you heard already, Apple just announced the new iPad, or at least they don't want to call it the iPad 3. They're actually calling it the new iPad. Literally, in quotes. Now, this new iPad has gotten several new features from the iPad 2 itself, so today in this video I'm going to be going over them, along with all the other little things that Apple has announced, which, with my predictions, they actually did announce a couple other things. So, to total everything up, they announced the new iPad, a updated Apple TV, and iOS 5.1. So we'll start off with the brand new iPad. Now, this iPad isn't really brand new, it's relatively new because it's got the same exact design as the iPad 2. The only difference is it's got a new 5-megapixel rear-facing 1080p video recording camera. That's a mouthful. So you can record beautiful videos and take the iPhone 4S good quality pictures. Obviously, with an 8-megapixel camera like we get on the iPhone 4S, pictures would be a lot better, but in this iPad 2's camera, we only got 5 megapixels and 1080p video recording. Possibly in the future, we'll get an 8-megapixel camera in a future iPad. We also got the full retina display that we've been wanting and we knew was going to come out, so the current retina display is available on the iPhone 4S, the iPhone 4, and the iPod Touch 4. So the display looks a lot nicer on the iPad itself, and just from looking at the invitation that Apple sent out, the quality is much better. We figured that out, but Apple demonstrated some of these quality differences today, and there is a huge difference because the Retina display on such a big iPad actually looks really good, and you get awesome quality. Apple also put a new processor into this device, and no, it's not the A6 chip, and it's not the A5 chip. It's in between, and it's called the A5X chip. Now, this chip is supposed to deliver up to 4 times more faster speed than you got with the A5 chip inside of the iPhone 4S and the iPad 2. And I guess that's a good thing, but it's not as fast or as good as the A6 chip would have been. I'm a little disappointed there, and they've never done an X chip, like they've never done a letter and number and then an X. I've never heard of that before, so this is something new that Apple has decided to do with just making the A5X chip. As we also predicted, however, I highly doubted we got 4G LTE on this new iPad. Basically, what that means is you get much faster speeds if you get a AT&T or Verizon 3G iPad. Obviously, if you get a Wi-Fi iPad, you're not going to have 4G LTE. But if you do decide to get an iPad with 3G, if you get the AT&T or Verizon, then you will have 4G LTE speeds, which even though we don't have it on the iPhone, it's a possibility to see it with the new iPhone that could come later this year, the iPhone 5 or the iPhone possibly 6, because if you think about it, the 4S is the 5th generation iPhone. It's a possibility that we will see 4G LTE speed on the future iPhone, but 4G LTE speed on an iPad would actually be really nice because it would deliver great speeds, and that tied into the A5X chip is perfect because you get fast internet speeds along with fast internet browsing, along with fast internet interacting, kind of. So it totals up, and like I said in my iPad rumor video, it works out great together. Apple also put Dictation into the iPad, but not Siri. Dictation is when you can go to your iPad keyboard and you can actually hit the little microphone button next to the spacebar, and you could talk to your iPad or iPhone to tell it what to do. Now, this comes pre-installed on the iPhone along with Siri, that's on the iPhone 4S, but with the new iPad, you're only going to get Dictation. Why they didn't get Siri on the iPad itself, I guess maybe they want to develop it a little more, or it's just not going to happen. Not really sure, but at least they did put Dictation on it. Now, for those of you wondering if the iPad, the new generation, wound up having a home button or not, yes, it did. It has the same exact design as the iPad 2, and even though we thought originally there would be no home button, well, there is. So quit guessing about it because there is a home button, and I don't think Apple's ready to get rid of it yet since the OS platforms have only been out for about 5 years now. So maybe just a couple more years with the home button itself. I'm sure it'll change somewhere in the future, but there still is a physical home button. One more thing I wanted to add about the rear camera. Apple is calling this the iSight rear camera on the iPad. Now, this is on the new iPad. It doesn't really work for the older iPad 2, but it's called the iSight camera. I'm not really sure why. If you think about it, iSight dates back to 2006, which actually my iMac, when the iSight camera was first introduced into the Macs and are still used today. I don't know really why Apple would say that it's an iSight camera when it's just a basically iOS device camera, but maybe they just wanted to play around with the names. I don't really know. I think if Steve Jobs was still around, it wouldn't be called the eyesight camera. Honestly, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but that's what Apple wants to call it. So this new iPad hasn't been called the iPad HD, the iPad 2S, or the iPad 3. It's just been called the new iPad. I think, once again, if Steve Jobs were still around, it would get a name like the iPad 2S or the iPad 3, but it's just called the new iPad, literally. So the new iPad will be available in stores, in the Apple Store, Best Buy, wherever you want to go pick up this new tablet. Will be available March 16th, which is, I think, next week. And you could go pick yours up, black and white, 16, 32, or 64 gigabyte. Of course, available for AT&T Verizon if you do choose to get the 3G model. It's at the same pricing you got with the iPad 2 and the iPad 1. And the iPad 2, unlike when the iPad 2 came out, they just took the iPad 1 off the market. The iPad 2 is actually still available to be purchased. Apple bumped it down to $100, so if you're just looking for an iPad with a lesser screen quality and a lesser camera and a somewhat lesser processor, then the iPad 2 is still available, and it's not bad for $100 drop. Now, me personally, I'm not going to be picking up the iPad the next generation, definitely now, because all there really is a new processor, a new camera, and a new display. There's really no reason to be going out and buying this new iPad if you have an iPad 2, unless you have some type of iPad 1 or maybe some older tablet, or you're getting your first tablet. So if you have an iPad 2, I don't recommend upgrading. Trust me, you're not missing out on much at all. I myself am not upgrading for two reasons. One, it's just not enough features for me to want to go out and buy this, and two, don't have enough money. I don't feel like selling my iPad 2 and losing money off of it, and it just won't work out for me, so I decided to hold off on it until maybe a new iPad is announced. Aside from the iPad being announced, there was also a newer or kind of updated Apple TV. Now, no, it's not the iTV that we hoped was going to be the big screen with the built-in Apple TV OS and maybe some more features that would be added like gaming or cable. Instead, we just got an update to the Apple TV. Now, they're actually going to sell a new set-top box. It's the same exact design. There really isn't any physical difference, except this set-top box comes with a brand new or revamped Apple TV OS, and it actually does look pretty nice. Here's an image of it right here. As you can see, you can kind of like scroll up and down instead of scrolling horizontally, so it's a pretty cool feature. And then there's also 1080p playback with the new Apple TV. Now, if you have an Apple TV 2G, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to update to the OS. Myself, I have an Apple TV 2G, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to update to the new OS. If I could, then there's absolutely no point to go out and buying the new Apple TV, especially if all you want is new 1080p quality. But otherwise, that's all Apple really did with the Apple TV. They kind of tried to stay away from it this year, which is kind of disappointing that there wasn't the iTV that we anticipated. However, it's a possibility that later in this year, Apple could do something to it. Last and main thing Apple had talked about this year is Siri, and there really wasn't much to it. Apple just talked about how great Siri is and how much it's done for people, and they also introduced Siri in Japanese. I guess that's going to help out some Japan customers or Japanese customers, but that's been added with Siri. And then also iOS 5.1 was released. It's now available for download on your iPhone, your iPod Touch, or your iPad, and one of the main features you'll first notice on your iPhone or iPod is on the lock screen, there is actually a complete slide to unlock, and then there's also a camera button. Now, this camera button does not go away. It's actually not a button. It's actually kind of like a drag type of thing. So as you can see, if I put my finger here and drag up, my camera immediately opens. Then I could do, whatever I want with it. So that's now permanently on the iOS screen. It's not going away even if you double tap the home button. So I don't know. I could get used to this, I guess. You obviously can't accidentally press it because if you do, it does nothing. I mean, you could tap it and it kind of bounces, but that's permanently on the lock screen now, and it no longer says unlock. It fully says slide to unlock. So good that they put that there, but now the camera button is permanent. So that's what you could definitely tell there's a difference between 5.0 and 5.1. So if you want, you can go download 5.1 now on your computer. You can plug it into your computer, which I think is a little bit faster, or you can go and get the software update, which basically all you got to do is unlock your phone, go to Settings, General, software update, and you should see 5.1 right there. Just make sure that you're running 5.0 already, otherwise you won't have this. Again, this is available for the iPhone, the iPod Touch, and the iPad. Just make sure that you have the appropriate device for it. So guys, that's all Apple really had in store for us this part of the year. It's a possibility that later this year, or it definitely will happen, that we'll get something about a new iPhone, a better Apple TV, or somewhere in there, there will just be more stuff. So we just have to wait and see, but overall, Apple did a pretty good job with today's announcement. I wish they could have done a little more. I didn't watch the keynote yet, so maybe I'm just missing something, but it wasn't fantastic. That's all I have to say. But it was pretty good. I'm glad that Apple decided to go ahead and bump up the features on the iPad and also released 5.1 finally, and kind of did some revamps with the Siri and the iTV. So thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave some comments below on your thoughts. Of course, rate, give this video a thumbs up, and click the subscribe button up top. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.